Run, party, repeat. Welcome to the East Coast Adventures Dirt and Vert podcast, where we talk all things running, racing, and training to help you get ready for your next big adventure.
Learn from our successes and our failures, and have fun at the same time. Join us right here every week with inspiring guests who share their captivating tales from the trails. And remember, nobody cares.
Run faster. All right, welcome back. This is East Coast Adventures with the Dirt and Vert podcast. I'm David.
And I'm Matt.
And we have someone that's very familiar to a local-ish race around Tennessee, and that is Eric Kienle. And Eric is currently the reigning record holder, I suppose, you've got the record, correct, for Mid-State Mile right now?
That's correct.
So for Mid-State from 2023, and Eric is coming back to Mid-State this year to compete again. But Eric actually has a very long, extensive list of races that date back for a few years, and he's got some pretty notable races. Another big one that you won was the Wild Florida Trail 120 miler. Looks like you were first place in it. And also Blood Rock, which I'm very familiar with. Looks like you did the 50 miler, and you got third place. But you've got some pretty amazing race results and just an awesome career of races so far. But if you don't care, Eric, tell us a little bit about who you are and how you got into running.
Yeah, so Eric Kienle, I'm 37. I've been running for about 12 years, been doing ultras for about 7 now. It was just kind of a whim at my work. I've been in veterinary medicine for 18 years, and at that time, one of the doctors, her husband, was putting on a local half marathon in Gainesville, Florida, and just asked me if I wanted to run the race. And I didn't run at the time. I was smoking cigarettes and everything. I was trying to get off them at the time, and I just kind of signed up for it, and I didn't even know how far a half marathon was. I was kind of tripping out about it being $40. I thought that was ridiculous for running. And then, they told me how far a half marathon was, and I absolutely fell in love with it. I loved just the training, so I just kind of progressed to some road marathons, and I wanted to do Ironmans. I just thought that was the next harder thing after running a road marathon. I thought that was just the natural progression of endurance sports, and I knew nothing about trail and ultra at the time, and just some YouTube videos popped up of Hurt 100 and Ginger Runner, and then I got Run Steep, Get High. I got stuck on all those things, and I was the more research I did, it was kind of more cost effective to run really far in the woods than it was to get a bike and a gym membership to swim. So I did Pikes Peak Marathon as my first trail race, and then jumped into Blood Rock for my first ultra distance.
Wow. Huh. Well, you didn't hold back from the toughness of a race.
Pikes Peak. So you climbed up a huge mountain?
Yeah. It was it's a half marathon up, then a half marathon down.
Wow.
Yeah, that was really hard. I was not ready for that.
Crazy.
So that was in 2017. And when did you run that half marathon?
I ran the half marathon in, I want to say 2013.
Okay. So did you stick with the shorter distances for a while and then move into ultras?
I did one more half marathon after that, and then I did 4 full marathons before I jumped into Pikes Peak.
Okay.
Yeah, I was trying to qualify for Boston because I thought that's the thing you did, and some of the runners I worked with, they were as you get older, you don't have to run as fast for Boston, So I kind of was just toggling back and forth with do I want to run Boston or do I want to run 100 miles? So I picked 100 miles, and we'll save Boston for a rainy day.
There you go. I love that. So how did you first figure out that ultras even existed? Was it through the podcast, or was it something that some people at work were already doing?
I was one of the surgeons I worked with. He was a big Boston guy, and he's like, if you want to see something crazy, he's check out this movie, the Barkley Marathons. So I think a lot of people saw that, a lot of non-runners saw that, and I was just fascinated by that. And then the more YouTube stuff, I would type in, the little videos would pop off to the side that were related content, and the more I looked into those, I learned about hard rock and Western and Hurt and all these other things, and kind of learned what you had to do to get into them. I didn't know there's like all these pre-qualifiers. So yeah, I just kind of started finding things that were close to me, or like Googling, difficult trail races. I landed on like Cruel Jewel and, Georgia Death Race. And Cruel Jewel was supposed to be my first 100, but I got hurt like the day before. That's a long story, but yeah, I got hurt the day before, didn't do that, ended up doing No Business as my first 100, but I went up to GDR to try to just volunteer, just so I could get in the lottery for like the following year, and absolutely fell in love with the community. It was just something so different than running road races. And I was like, oh man, I want to come back here. That's where I met Alex Brown. And yeah, that just kind of started the whole ultra scene for me.
That's awesome, man. That's a cool story. And No Business is a great first 100-mile race. That course is beautiful.
Excellent. Love it.
And Brian Gages. He's a great race director too.
Yeah.
Puts on an awesome race. But you did Cruel Jewel, man. Like you did Pikes Peak, Blood Rock, and Cruel Jewel. And you did the 50-mile Cruel Jewel and the 50-mile Blood Rock, but those are hard races. I mean, absolutely hard. And you got third place at Blood Rock and eighth place at Cruel Jewel, and that's impressive.
That's pretty good.
I mean, very new into the ultras, and you're kind of figuring it out already. Was there like a huge learning curve from the 4 marathons into these 50-mile races and 100-mile race? Did you experience stuff with the bonking or stomach issues that you hadn't dealt with before?
I think really like it was really like the Pikes Peak Marathon. That thing took me like 8 hours, and I normally can run like a road marathon in like 3.5, and like I was just not prepared for how much I wasn't going to be running. So that kind of like woke me up to, oh man, I'm going to be out here like way longer than I thought. So like I was bonking like crazy in that race. So I was able to kind of predict I was going to have to eat a lot more for Blood Rock, and but yeah, I'd never been on my feet for that much time, like out on a run. So like that was something completely new to me. But like Blood Rock was just great. Like that race just clicked for me the whole time. But I really like started to dial in my nutrition and learned I needed a lot more, than just like gels. I needed like real food and a lot more like calories and, changing clothes, changing shoes, things like that. It was, trial by fire, like in the hardest way possible.
So you were living in Florida when you were starting all this, right?
Yeah, I was living in Florida. Then yeah, I'd go out to Colorado. I'd go up to Georgia, multiple times, or go to Kentucky for No Business. Yeah, always changing really flat stuff.
That's what I was getting. How did you train with all that elevation? Because Cruel Jewel, I mean, it's probably got 30. It's got 30,000 for the 100-mile. I don't know how much for the 50, but No Business got 14.
Yeah, I lived in maybe the one partially hilly part of Central Florida. So there was my hills weren't like any bigger than like 100 feet. And I would literally just run up and down that in the heat for hours. And I would just do my entire run. Like I did one that was just like this 0.3 stretch. And I ran that for 19 miles, just up and down, just trying to get as much vert as I possibly could. I made my runs really boring, for other people, but like I just liked that it was harder.
Yeah.
And yeah, like that always helped me like run like up in Georgia. Like it was weird how it like actually worked out for me.
Yeah.
Well, it did work.
It did work.
So whatever you're doing, it seemed to pay off.
Well, Florida's hot too, so I mean, that's gotta help.
So you did some pretty notable races too. Like you said, Georgia Death Race. You also did Hooray 50-mile, No Business 100, and then you jump into Wild Florida Trail 120-miler, and you won that race. Tell us a little bit about that race. I don't know much about the Wild Florida Trail Run, so
yeah.
Is it?
Yeah,
I would imagine it's swampy.
Yeah, it was so wet, man. I can't remember what my time was on that. I want to say it was like 23 hours or just under. But yeah, that was 120 miles point to point, all on the Florida Trail, just following orange blazes. That race started at like 5 p.m. So you had about an hour of light, and then it was dark until the morning, and it rained for 18 out of 23 hours for me to finish that race, and I led that race start to finish. So like I think at one of the aid stations somebody like caught up with me, and then I never like saw anybody for the rest of the race. But it was just real remote, and it was really cool because like that's when Sean was first starting to bring a lot of races to Florida, and like the Florida Trail really didn't get a lot of attention at that time. Like I lived there my whole life and never even knew that that was there
Hmm.
until a couple years before that. So it was just really good to like reconnect with my home, and this stuff was like right outside my backyard. So like it really just helped me have like an appreciation where I was from, and just get out in the woods and not see anybody.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I've heard that's a pretty difficult trail just because of if it rains, it doesn't drain. It just turns into a
Yeah.
soupy mess.
Yeah, and then like the grass is, everything just keeps constantly growing in Florida. So like the second that grass gets wet, if you change dry socks, dry shoes, the second you leave that aid station a quarter mile down the road, like you're already soaking wet again. Like you
Hmm.
just wet the whole entire race. And
Mm.
like even though it's flat, man, that is deceivingly hard. Like
Yeah.
that flatness beats you up.
Yeah, it does. You're not changing.
Yeah, I hope you had discovered a good chafing ointment by then or cream.
I hadn't got on salty britches yet at that time. I was still trying to do body glide, but like I made it work. But like yeah, that was rough. I like lost all my toenails after that race just from being waterlogged like for a whole day. But yeah, we got it
Yeah,
done.
I remember, squirrel's nut butter. I was like, yeah, we'll get this stuff. Body glide. I mean, it's all great for a couple hours.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
after
like
that, I mean,
it works.
you'll go through a whole tub if you're running a 100-mile race. Like, it just doesn't last. I mean, nothing like the stuff we have now,
Yeah.
like salty britches and there's a few others. But back then it was, I mean, you had Vaseline's and Squirrel's Nut Butter, Body Glide, and I think there was like a Gold Bond one or something. It wasn't
Yeah, that was
much.
it. That was what you had.
Oof. Yeah. This hurts.
But luckily, I had salty britches from the first time I started running ultras till now. I missed out on all that.
So you started like your bigger races towards the end of 2019. So that's like the no business where you really get into it. You did no business, and then you've done Wild Florida Trail, and then this is where we meet. Eric is the 2020. This is the COVID year, baby. COVID
Yeah.
year. I'm surprised you even got to do the Wild Florida Trail, but I guess in January that was really right before
That was
they
right
started
before.
shutting everything down. But luckily, Becca and them were able to put on the Mid-State Mile, and that's one of the reasons that, a lot of people got out there, and, it was such a fun event because so many people had not been able to race. And it was just like a big family reunion of runners out there like, hey, finally a real event, not a virtual event.
Yeah.
And I had no idea what the course was. I had no idea that it was even a last man standing race. Like I just really knew that we're running 1.1 mile loop every 20 minutes. And I knew it was the last man standing, but I didn't really know much other than that. Like I was very naive when I went to this race. When I get there, I think it was Doug Holder that looked at me and Mike, and he's like, "What's your goal?" I was like, "I don't know, probably 100 miles." He's like, "Have you walked this course?" I said, "No, dude, I ain't even seen it." He's like, "Let me know what you think after the first loop." I was like, "We finished first loop." I said, "Yeah, I'm going for like 40 miles." So Eric, it was we get to Mid-State 2020, and this is like the first year of the race, and one of the things that I remember, it was Father's Day weekend. It was extremely hot, and we were all just out there going. If I recall correctly, which I'm looking at it now, I guess I do recall correctly. I just remember a video coming out from Mid-State saying the 4 horsemen, and it was you, Alex Brown, Chad,
Mm-hmm.
and Greg
Greg.
Armstrong.
Yeah.
And you all were the last 4 men standing. And then I think from there it ended up going down to just Chad and Greg. But, your very first time out there, you made it in the top 4. What was that? So just looking at your race results and stuff so far, that was your first last man standing too, correct?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I was familiar with, with like, I think the only backyard I knew of was Laz's. And I think just then, like, I knew like the format of like the 4.16, every hour. Alex was the one who kind of wrote me into this, saying, Becca's hosting this race, and explained that this was going to be different and there was going to be climbing. Like so like you said, I was kind of naive going into this. It was, kind of like dumb luck. I really didn't know what all that was going to entail. So like I just I didn't know really how to train for something like that. So I would just kind of, I was going through like a divorce at the time. We were like splitting up the family, and like I just couldn't sit in the house. Like I would have like all this anxiety. So I would just go in this little hill in my neighborhood and just walk up and down it until I got a mile and try to do it under 20 minutes. And like that's all. And then I would just do that kind of multiple times throughout the day. And at least like Florida was like nice and hot, but like I remember getting out there and yeah, it was just kind of like it was a kick in the teeth. I wasn't expecting like to really go that far out there, and it was just so hard and grueling that I remember like once I finally like timed out, like I ate something and drank something, and then like not even like 15 minutes later I went out and like hiked another loop, just walked it while they were out running, and like I made it back in the time limit. And like that was kind of like the first thing that was like, oh man, I had like more to give out, to give out here. And then I'm still just sitting there watching Alex, Greg, and Chad go, and I'm like, man, I could still be out there. Like if I would have like stayed a little more mentally stronger, or just eaten or drank something, it could have been a different outcome. And then watching, Greg, collapsing across the finish line and seeing like what he was giving out there, that like really changed my whole perspective on like, we have more to give out on that course, and like everybody could have, and everybody watching that like happen, that kind of like lit a fire inside me watching that.
It was that first year was pretty cool, like just everything that happened. And the video at the very end with Greg and Chad, that thing kind of just blew up, and it was really cool to see, Greg giving his all out there. And I think that's what really inspired a lot of people, was seeing that grit that he showed, trying to be the best that he could be. And, I think that's what everybody, whether it's a last man standing or a 50-mile race or even a half marathon, I think that's what everybody's really trying to do.
Mm-hmm.
But you don't always see it the way that we got to see it at the end of Mid-State. And that's what made that so special, is like you saw this man barely being able to stand up, going out on another lap. He fell down coming across the finish line, and gets up and just takes off trying to do another lap. And at that point, he has given everything that he possibly can. And now you're just waiting. And that's just so cool. Like there's last man standing events are so cool for that. Like you get to see it. In a 100-mile race, you don't see that. I mean, most of the time you're by yourself, to be honest.
Yeah.
And I think that's just so cool. And that first race too, like I didn't even realize like till after this event, we're looking through pictures, because I think Misty was there taking pictures, and Misty's just amazing. She takes awesome pictures. And I think it was Misty that was there taking pictures. That might've been the second year.
I know she was there the second year.
But I was looking through the pictures, and I see this one guy, and I'm like, who is this? Like, I recognize this person. And it finally dawned on me it was Jesse Itzler. I had listened to all of his books and everything, and it was just, and I was just like, well, that's really cool that he was talking to me. I was sitting right beside him. I had no idea the whole time who he was. He was like cheering everybody on after he got done, and he timed out and quit. Like he was just there having fun and cheering people on and just talking to everybody. I mean, I talked to him for a little while, and like I never even realized who that was till after the fact, and I was like, well, that's really cool. So like you just never know who you're going to meet at these events, and I think that's really cool that he came to Tennessee.
Oh yeah, that was awesome. Like I recognized him too, and I'm like, I had to have somebody tell me. I'm like, who is that? I'm like, I recognize him, and they're like, that's Jesse Itzler, and I'm like, all right. I'm like, makes sense now.
Yeah. Well, I was right there with you. I had no idea. Yeah. I want to kind of fast forward so we can talk about, some of your other races later on, but I want to kind of, it's Mid-State week. I even got my shirt on, I
got mine on.
I'm not, look at that. I'm not running it, but I'll be crewing. So this will be the first time I'll be back there in years. So I'm kind of excited about that, but let's fast forward now. So 2020, me and you both were, we were in Mid-State together, and you went much further than I did. It was Father's Day weekend. I stopped after I was the last RD standing. It was me and Doug Holder, and I quit at that point. And then I wake up the next morning and see that Mr. Kienle is still going as the Four Horsemen, which was really cool. But then fast forward to 2021, and that's when me and you thought we were going to, like, we trained, we talked about this, like we were ready.
Oh
and we
yeah.
go into 2021, and it was kind of a bust for both of us. Nothing went our way at all, which happens sometimes. But tell us a little bit about what you, because the reason I want to tell this story, and I think this is so important for anybody that's listening. Eric goes in his very first year, naive, unknown, no expectations, and he's in fourth place.
Yeah.
Trains his ass off, getting ready for this race, and doesn't even come close to what he got the previous year. So tell us a little bit about what you feel like went wrong and what you feel like you learned, because we want to step forward then into the next year and the next year, like into this year.
Oh man.
And talk about it. So tell us a little bit about 2021 and what you feel like you learned, and did you try something different?
So yeah, going into 2021. So yeah, right after 2020 mid-state, I was telling you I was like getting divorced and splitting up the kids and like all this stuff.
So
I ended up
that's
getting
why
a
you did
job.
better. You were running angry.
Maybe, like I honestly think it was just dumb luck the first time, but like, I think I did better there. I was in Florida, and I think I had like that heat behind me. So like right
Yep.
after that race, in June, I moved to Montana in August. I got a job offer out here, paying good money. I was able to, move in with somebody living here in Missoula, and, mountains and like all this things I didn't like have access to. And like I was honestly like I quit all my other races, for leading up to mid-state, and just wanted to solely focus on that. But like I let a lot of that year get to my head, and I thought it was going to be very repeatable. And like I was like honestly stroking my own ego, and I was like looking at like Chad, and I was looking at Greg, and I was like, well, I'm going to go there crewless like Greg. I'm going to like have this hardened mentality like Chad, and like, but like I was super trained leading into that race, and about a month before it, rolled my ankle really bad twice on the same run. My ankle blew up to like the size of my knee. I didn't run for an entire month leading up to that race, and all I did was sit around my house, have this pity party, and just drink. Like that's all I did. And I would sit here and watch, Chad's podcast and listen to him talk about mid-state with Becky and John, and like just like obsess over this. And like I just had it in my head that there was a video that Chad said, like I unhealthily like fixated to like Chad's words and stuff. And he was saying something of how he would learn more than being defeated by somebody he knows and loves than if he were to win the race. Like him finding his limit, and I just felt like for some reason I took on that responsibility. It was going to be my job to give him that gift. And like, I don't know why I prioritized that over like focusing on what I should be doing out there. I was more focused on like other people and like trying to give this to somebody else versus like being confident with my training. And plus like, yeah, getting hurt like a month before it, didn't do a single thing to like rehab that or strengthen it. I just like stayed off it and just like drank. It was not the best thing to do. And also like living in Montana, I was like, yeah, tons of vert, tons of miles, but like there's not the heat. There's not the heat like that by that time of the year. So like I didn't heat train at all for it. And I remember getting down to Tennessee, and I was like helping them like set up like the lights and the poles, like cooking in the sun the day before the race because I had nowhere else to be. Showed up like in a U-Haul, to keep like costs low and stuff. So I just drove around a box truck for a couple days. But yeah, I just hung out at the race in the sun, like barely like drank enough water before that race, like didn't have any help. Yeah, like I instantly started going downhill with that race. Like I was kind of like sticking to Chad. I think like having all the cameras like in your face, that was like just stroking my ego a little bit more too. Just me like focusing on what I wanted to do. For some reason I wanted to be perceived as something more than what I was at that time, because like I did so strong the year before. So I'm like, well, I'll just do that, but I'll do it better this year. And I really didn't take all the measures I needed to do. And like I was running Chad's pace that whole time, which was not efficient for me. I'm a little bit of a faster runner, so coming in at like that 18:30, like I wouldn't have enough time to really take care of myself, like in between the loop. And like just how much I was drinking at that time, like just didn't help. So like I'd come through the loop, I'd forget things, then I'd be out on the loop trying to remind myself, like, hey, you got to do this when you get back, you get, through the corral. And then somebody would like talk to me when I come through the corral, and then I get distracted, and then the next loop would start, and now it'd be like, man, I was supposed to do this like 3 loops ago, and like I just got to a point where like the heat was like too much. I wasn't eating enough. Like I wasn't taking in any salt. I was just water, water, water. Like that's all I was doing. And like yeah, like I eventually like mentally timed myself out because I was just like I'm not going to be able to like keep this up much longer. So but it was really good. I'm really grateful that that year happened because that year really checked my ego, and it really made me learn that in a running race, like the last thing I need to be exercising is my mouth. I didn't need to make all these posts. Like if I've really like reflected a lot over the years of Midstate, and I've gone back and like read my posts from like when I started running till now, and like that whole year leading up, man, I was basically like ripping Chad's words off and like passing them off as my own. And then it really made me think, I'm like what part of me was actually at that race? Like I was trying to be this person. I was trying to be that person. I was trying to, incorporate somebody else's quality as mine. And like there was like no part of me that was like actually there. So like when I left there, like, I was like, I've got to do something different. So it was that year was just a really good like ego check for me, and like kind of made me shut my mouth.
Dude, that's some very wise information for people, but most importantly, that is extremely like being self-aware
Yeah.
of your identity and trying to figure out like what caused your problems, and being able to go back and reflect on that. Like that, you're exactly right. Like you were trying to be something you were not, and you were just totally out of it at that point. And I love the fact that you actually talk about this just now, because that's not the answer I was expecting you to give. Not at all. I didn't know what, me and you never really had this conversation. It's so funny because me and you both that year, we had some big races, and I had some big races that had went really well at this point. And like, I was expecting to be, top 3, 4. And I mean, just for instance, let's take you went from, let's see, what was the previous year?
2020.
You were 71.5 miles. And then the previous year you come in and you're like 34.1. So that's a big, that's a big difference. And I've not even looked at mine. I remember the second year. I mean, I got more the second year because I quit the first year. Like I was going through some of the similar problems you were going through the very first year. Like we were, my daughter was home or was somebody else. And I felt bad because I wasn't there for Father's Day. And, and when I found out that race was not, it was going to be that hard, I was like, I'm not going to run through the whole night. I want to get back and see my daughter. So when me and Doug were like running laps, and he's like, I'm going to quit. And I'm like, I'm quitting one lap after you. I was like, because, I just wanted that last race director standing hat. I thought it was cool.
Right.
And I had no idea at this point, the second year, what I was going to be able to do. So I'm like you. I'm like, I ran into dark and I had no issues. I'm like, I'm going to really send it this time. Like I'm in it this whole time. I'm going. And I get 53 miles and I'm puking all over the place. Like I think I was puking at like mile 40-ish. And at mile 53, I timed out. And that's nowhere near what I expected, like at all.
Mm-hmm.
And I will say this. I did not run my race either, Eric. I tried to run 18-minute miles.
Mm-hmm.
I tried to do something that I thought was a strategy to win this race. And at the time I was talking to my coach, and we were like, yeah, I would try to focus on going slower, conserving energy and all that. And so that's what I went with, because I agreed too. But in the race, I realized real quick that was the wrong strategy. But by the time I realized that, I was halfway into the race, and it got me. And the issue I ran into is I'm kind of like you. Like, that's not my normal stride. That's not how I run. I overheated between laps. I never cooled down. And the previous year, I was running laps like 15 minutes, and I would come back, throw ice on me, cool off, and I'd be good to go. I never got cooled off, and I just stayed like constantly overheating, and it ended up causing stomach issues and other things. And to your point, I got caught up in trying to do something someone else done that would made them successful.
Mm-hmm.
But I can honestly say that running is a completely different type of sport where you can't just copy what someone else does, because everybody's ability is different. Everybody's training is different. And there is something to be said about however you train, that's how you should race. And if you didn't train like that, don't race like that. And that took me a long time to learn. Still learning some of that. But like this last race I just did, I ran it almost exactly like how I trained. Best race I've done. And I've just got to continue to remember that, because, man, when you're at the start line, it's hard not to be stupid and just take off.
Caught up in that.
Send it, baby.
I mean, I almost done it at Yeti 50. I looked down in the very first few seconds, and my watch said I was running a 5:57 lap, or 5:57 mile, and I was like, and I just started slowing down and slowed it all the way down to like 8 minutes, and then I started speeding up to my pace. But if you've got to have that self-awareness and realization to not get caught up in the moment and be able to say, I have put so much training into this. I have to run my own race. Whether I win or fail, I need to win, or I need to run my own race, or I'm not going to even know if my training was worth my time. So that was a huge learning curve for me. I can't believe, like, going now into the following year, you obviously like took that to heart. We're talking 2021. You barely get like roughly half the distance to what you got the previous year. But now we come back in 2022, and you're a second place, 127 mile. You're with the assist. Like, you're right there battling for first and second. Tell us about that. So you obviously took all this stuff to heart. Did that change your training? Did that change your focus? What did you work on?
So yeah, I was so at that time, I was left there. I was still drinking a lot, and I was still training really well. I've kind of like reflected on this, like, I was really good at having like my cake and eating it too. So yeah, I would like, I'd still be up like drinking and stuff, but I'd still go for like my 20 miler with a ton of vert the next day. I started training a lot smarter, but like I still wasn't doing like everything I could have done. I ended up picking up like Becca and John as a coach. I started training a lot differently. I started, running a lot slower, doing like these low heart rate long runs where like my heart rate couldn't get over 135. So like when I first started doing that, like I was walking a lot. Like almost all my miles were like 14-minute miles, 12-minute miles, like whatever they would be, just this run walk. And whenever my heart rate would get too high, I would just kind of bump it back down. But I had a lot of life things happen here, and like roommates and job changes and all this stuff. But it was all this drama like in my my everyday life that was just like so unhealthy. But like when I would be out on my runs, like everything just started feeling very zen, very, very comfortable. Once like my heart rate got like on board running these longer distances, like I seriously felt like I could like stay out there forever. And like I didn't want to come off the mountains because I didn't want to come home and deal with this job, or I didn't want to have to deal with this roommate that I had, or whatever like the big responsibility I was going to have to do. Like I just wanted to stay out as long as I possibly could, because it just felt effortless, and it felt really good to just kind of connect with like my surroundings here in Montana, and like really started to make like slowing it down and like just running at a much slower pace really just started to make me appreciate being present in my training and really enjoying like the process of the training a lot more. And it's like ultra runners, we always say, practicing gratitude and remaining present, and it's like I hear these phrases, but I really didn't know how to like incorporate that into my life and like practice what others are preaching. I really like, I would almost like pass that advice off to someone else, like, hey man, like you do this, this might be good for you, but like I didn't know how to use those tools I'm trying to give to someone else. So I really just kind of learned to just kind of stay in that run and in that moment, and really just like be present. So like when it came to mid-state, like right before then, like all this crap happened here. We don't really have to go into that, but like I just kind of like was always looking as like a run for like this escape to get away from dealing with it. And I like quit this terrible job that I was at, went and like I was like, man, I can't wait to get on a plane, get away from this stuff. And I was like, no, I handled every single thing I needed to at this house before I left. There was not this escape that I was trying to get away from to go run this race for like this temporary, calmness. It was like everything was done and settled. Like I didn't have to focus on anything other than just running that race. And like it just felt really good. And I know like that year was still like this big buzz of like, is Chad gonna come back? Is Chad gonna come back? And like I obsessed over Chad that whole second year, and about halfway through leading into the third, I was just kind of done personally with this like mystery of like, is he gonna come back for round 3? Like, and I just like very healthily like let it go. And I just told myself like, and I like journaled, dude. I wrote all, like I started writing, Becca had me writing stuff just to like get stuff off my chest. And like I just kind of like let him go. And I just told myself, I'm like, if he comes there, great. I will welcome him with open arms and we'll have a great race. But that was it. But it wasn't like I was training to beat someone else anymore. It was like I just wanted to win the race. I still wanted to win versus like the next year, like having the will to win. I wanted a finisher's place. Like I wanted a quilt. I wanted a thing. I wanted a possession. Yeah, I worked hard and did it, but like it just like still like just wasn't there. And I kind of like started to like, I'm like, I'm not going to run someone else's race. I'm going to run what's effective for me and what I know works. I had Kevin Mills as my crew person that year, and we were awesome. And we like had an excellent race out there. But yeah, it was just like my mind shift going into each year's race just completely morphed into something totally different every year. And a lot of it was, that growth that we talk about from mid-state. Like it changes people, and you have, 364 days to like think about that race, but think about what that race has taught you, and then like you change things, and then you bring it the next year and see how that, works for you.
So, the thing about it is like, I totally get like obsessing over someone, thinking about, they've won this race 2 times. Are they going to come back? Is that going to, how's that going to make me feel when they show up? Like, am I going to be more competitive? Am I going to like get into my shell, or am I going to open, meet them with open arms? But you always kind of have that in your head of like, okay, this person's going to show up. They're going to be my competition. But the truth of the matter is now you all have far exceeded,
Right.
the distance that he went, and it's probably going to far exceed it this time. Like every year it's growing.
Yeah.
And here's the thing, is like, we've not even skimmed the surface of like people that truly are like backyard ultra runners. So at some point, like you're getting better at this, you're becoming a great last man standing runner. And there are many others. I mean, there's always going to be someone that's going to push us to get there. And that's the thing I love about a race. And me and Mary laugh about this because we're exactly the same. I won't look at who signed up for a race. I don't want to know.
Nope, not anymore.
Don't ever look at who signed up for a race. I don't care, because I don't want to get focused on anything other than what my plan is. And that's hard for some people to do. They want to get on there and look and see like who all's their competition.
I'm looking like, who is this? Who's this new guy?
And it doesn't matter to me, because on that day, it's anybody's race. And the last thing you want is something in your head.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And I love the fact that you let that go. You just you're like, I'm done. I got to quit. And you had a great race. Do you think that moving from Florida to Montana helped any with the hills and the elevation?
It helped. It helped with the climbing and the vert, but like, yeah, going into the third year, I definitely made sure to incorporate heat training into my training towards the end. So I
Is
think
that
that
hard to
played
do
a
in
huge
Montana?
difference. A little bit. Like this year's like the first year it's actually like warming up. Like every year I've gotten on the plane, it's like 55 degrees and perfect
Oh wow.
weather. It's all the spring flowers are out, like we've had a couple like 80-degree, 90-degree days. So like that's been nice, but that's all come in taper. So
So
I've
do
been going
you?
out with like my winter clothes and like beanies and gloves and like stuff I would wear when it's normally like 20 degrees and I'm going up and down the mountains, or I'm like sitting in the sauna or the steam room now,
Okay.
but making it hot, towards the
Yeah.
end.
Yeah. How do you keep that mustache in such great shape in the
Oh,
sauna?
little bit of wax, man. Some salty britches. Honestly, works really well on the mustache.
Does it?
But
You figured
Hey, there you go, Amy. There's your new
Salty.
britches
yeah,
mustache cream. All right, so we're talking 127 miles. Your second place. You all both beat any previous record that
Yep.
stood for this course. So, you and Justin, you're first and second, 128 and 127 miles. You got the assist. You're in business. Like you've kind of come back and you've at least found something that's working for you.
Yep.
Now let's talk about 2023. 120. Well, actually, let me ask you this before we do
yeah,
that. What happened at the end of the race?
yeah. I was gonna
I never
backtrack to
knew
that.
this.
Yeah, so I was dealing with like some like physical like IT band hip stuff. I didn't really do like strength stuff at that time. So like I was like taking ibuprofen and like hitting like the massage gun, and I was kind of starting to limp a little bit. I had such a like that was probably one of my best executed races. Like Kevin Mills and we were like clockwork coming through. Like it was like I was able to eat. Like there was no problems. I never felt hot. Like it was even a little bit cooler that year. But I remember like Justin was like really strong. He was struggling in the beginning of that race, but he was able to
You
kind
were.
of bounce back and get like a second wind. But like I just kind of started gradually declining towards the end, and it kept seeming like he was getting stronger. And then when he started having another rough patch, and we were both kind of talking about like how we like right after we beat Chad's record, really didn't know like how much more like we each had like in ourselves, to keep going. And like we were like spending some time out, and then like he started kind of getting a second wind. But like when he was like telling me like he didn't know how much he had left, like I was trying so hard to like hold on. And then like I think like I let off the gas, and like that was like it took just 1 second for my mind to like switch off and like get out of game mode and start thinking that like the end was around the corner. Now I'm going to win. And like I felt like my body was just trying to push away the pain for so long, and then it just saw like a glimpse of light that like the end was near. And I
Yeah.
think my body just started to like recover right there on the spot and just like stiffen up. And then he got like a second, like a 15th wind, and like he was taking off, like leaving me in the dust, man. And I literally remember like starting those loops and hobbling, and like Justin would take off, and like I'm back in the dark, and I literally remember like crying and just being like, please God, like don't let this go. Like don't let this like slip away from me. Like please, like let me have this. And like it got to a point where like I couldn't I was like really good at climbing that year. And it got to a point like the downhills were really hard with what was going on with like my hips and IT bands and knees. So I was like starting to lose it on the downhills. I got to the point like I couldn't really run the flats, but I could still climb. And like that was great. But like once I started losing the ability to climb, like I slowed down significantly. And
Hmm.
I remember one of my kind of like my last ish loops. I remember Becca coming out to the crossroads because I was like starting to fall behind, and people were seeing that. And I think that was like it's it's kind of blood in the water. You get to those last two people, you really start to see that other person going down, like that's fueling you. The end's near.
Yeah.
And I remember Becca being like at the crossroads, me coming down Devil's Dance, and she's like, how much time do you have? And I was like, I'm like, it's at like 13 minutes right now or whatever. And she's like, you need to run. You need to run. and I got up Machete fine, and I remember getting ready to come down Widow's Row, and I could hear that two-minute whistle blowing, and
Mm-hmm.
like I like pushed so hard, it hurt so much coming through down that downhill through that field, just barely made it through, and then I started that next loop, and that ended up being my next loop, and like I kind of lost my ability to climb with those last two loops, and Becca ended up meeting me at the top of Devil's Dance, and I just basically hobbled all of like Stabbin' Cabin after Myers, and she was already up at the top, and like, I wasn't gonna make it back, and she's like took my trekking poles, and I put like my hands on her back, and she just kind of walked me down the decline, and we got to the crossroads, and she's like, "Do you want to go back to camp?" And I was like, "No, I'm gonna finish the loop." I'm like, I'm not going to run a half loop out here, even though I was like timed out. I think by that time, like Justin was already starting his like final loop, but like I just couldn't, I just let off that mental fortitude that I had gained and like had stayed in for so long in the race, just because like I thought the end was like there. I thought Justin didn't have it much more, and like I was like, I'm going to win. And like I just took it off for a second, and like that like brought me down, and like, yeah, didn't make that loop, but I finished the loop and made it back, and like I just like sat down in the chair, waited for Justin to come back.
That's man, that's really humbling, like,
Yeah.
to be in that situation. And it's such a huge letdown, like just sitting there, and we've all been there. Like you get to that point where you're like, I'm gonna win this.
Yep.
I've got it. And then all of a sudden, like something happens and you don't. And then you're just sitting there reflecting on what the hell just happened.
Yeah.
And, you feel like it's a huge accomplishment because you're second, but it also makes you feel like it's a huge letdown because you should have won. You feel like you should have won or you could have won. And did that light a fire under you now for 2023?
Yeah, it really made me, I left there, like, I think that's the year I took the most amount of growth from, how I was talking about that like growth period until like the next year, that 364 days in between. And my training was so smart, like my heat training was great, nutrition was great, had great crew, but I was just like, I'm like, there's something like I need to work on more than just being like a good athlete, because like I was telling you, like I was like drinking a lot at the time too, like insane amount, like dangerous amount of how much I was drinking. Shortly after that race, I came back to Montana, and like that August, like I reached out to a lot of people like from Mid-State family, like Luke, Justin, Becca, John, Alex Brown, and like I was just very honest, and I was like, I think I have a drinking problem. And like I talked to a lot of people, and I decided to get sober that August. And like I went for like a hike, and I went for like a 15-mile hike, and just packed up my bag and like brought my water filtration, just took off for the woods, and just kind of had this big reflecting moment, and like basically just like talked to God like the whole time. And I was like, I need help. Like I need to do something, and I just reached this moment where I'm like, either I'm going to do something about this now, or I'm going to do something about this in 10 years, and it's going to be way worse off. And just broke down, and just like really reflected on my life of like, what do I need to do to be like good for Eric? Like, what do I need to do to be like a better father for my girls? Like a better like partner in my relationship? Like, how do I like stay in Montana? Like all these things, dude. And I haven't touched alcohol since then. So I got sober and like worked on being like a better person, not just focusing on being a better athlete who could run more miles. And that was the difference for me, I think. Because like I was saying, like I was like very big on like this, like have my cake and eat it too. Like I could drink till 4 or 5 in the morning, wake up late morning, be hungover for the first half of my run, feeling awful, but like still get the run done, and then be hydrated by the end of the run. And I was just kind of tired of doing that. Like I was just like, what if I went into these runs feeling good? Like what if I wasn't like taxing my body in this super unhealthy way. Like, besides what other runners may think of me of like, oh, I'm a good athlete and stuff, it's like, no, like, I've got to like set a better example for my kids. One of my friends said something like, you've got to be like the man you want your daughters to grow up and marry, and like that like really stuck with me. And I was like, I've got to be better for them. So yeah, that leading into like 2024, like I had the kids out here for like the summer, and it was great. And like, I stopped drinking, so they were, or not the summer, they were here for the winter. Had them here for a whole month, took all this time off, had them over for like Christmas and all this stuff, completely sober when they were here. And it was just great. Like, I didn't need anybody else's help. I was handling all my problems and responsibilities and like putting the time in for them. And Greg always says this thing about being more of a contributor versus a consumer. And it was like, I was kind of done being selfish and, finding these ways I could have like these like vices, but still like show up to the plate, and it was like, nope, there's none of that anymore. And it's like, I was just putting my time for like other people. And like after they were here for that like Christmas, like I flew them home to Tennessee, and I had like this like talk with Beck and John. We walked the mile like right before Tennessee Mile. Walked them out there with the kids. My kids hiked the mile out there, and like I was talking with like my ex-wife, and like, hey, what do you think if like the kids came to like live with me for a year? Like, and she's like, we've never like talked about that or anything, but like she's like, see what you have to do to get them registered in school. See what you have to do, what they need. And like I spent that whole next year like being sober and like trying to get everything hammered so that like after like 2023, like I was going to pick up my kids and be a full-time dad of 2 girls. And I just like my like priorities just shifted, and it was like, yeah, I really didn't care what like how many followers I had or how many likes I had on some reel I posted or anything like that. I was done like seeking the attention of trying to portray being a good runner. And it was like, I wanted to more like be a good person, like, it was like, yeah, I'm a good athlete at that time, but it was like, I may not be as good as like I portray myself to be. And like, I just wanted to like fix all the bullshit. I wanted to like be real with myself and look myself in the mirror and like make a change,
Dude, that's
deep,
that's
dude.
absolutely amazing. I didn't realize you went through so much shit to change all of that in a year. I mean, you've had some self-reflection, and I can tell that you're very good at self-awareness. You may not always do that check when you need to, but
right.
But when you do, you're very self-aware of your problems, and that, my friend, is a fucking talent and a skill that you should be super thankful that you have, because not a lot of people can do that. So that in itself is a huge gift. And listening to you say that, it's amazing, because a lot of us can't have that self-reflection to say that we have a problem. So that is your God-given gift. Like, that is amazing. You've used it multiple times to be a better person, or to be a better runner, or to be a better father. That truly is your gift. Truly amazing. And kudos to you for doing that to get your kids with you, because I mean, I'm sure you love that, but I'm sure they adore that, like, to get to spend that much time with their dad.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So that's just absolutely amazing to hear this whole transition. And I'll say this as I'm drinking an old fashioned, because I do it every podcast. But I have myself, I've tried to cut down a lot on drinking too. By no means I haven't had like a huge drinking problem, but I have had the point to where I was drinking a little bit every day. And I mean, just the honest truth is that if you dive deep into heart rate variability and how alcohol affects your performance, it's a huge impact. If you drink alcohol, the next day your heart rate variability is going to change. It's going to drop. It's going to be worse because your body's fighting off toxins. That takes away from you recovering quicker. That takes away from your performance. A lot of people that train so much, and this is one of the reasons I quit drinking as much as I have. I have a drink during the podcast. I might have one drink, a couple of drinks after a race. That's my celebration. And, I'll drink here and there. But when I'm training for like a big race, leading up to the race, I try not to drink hardly at all. I might have a drink here and there. If someone like gives me enough peer pressure to drink one beer with them, I'll do it. Not mentioning any names, Tony. But, you know, that's the honest truth, is like the actual alcohol itself takes away from the recovery. It takes away from the performance, and it hurts you. And there's a bunch of studies on this. I mean, there was a team that was drinking and binge drinking all the time. It was a sports soccer team. I believe it was a soccer team, and they decided to quit drinking. Like 6 weeks or 8 weeks or whatever during this whole training cycle leading up to this championship, and they won it.
Yeah.
Like the best season they ever had. They all quit binge drinking. They all quit drinking. Like, they focused on their heart rate variability, their performance, their recovery, and it really does make an impact. And I think you also saw that impact, because you probably felt better on your runs. You were able to push harder on your runs. You were probably able to keep your heart rate more consistent on those runs because your body wasn't dehydrated. You might have been, you might have been trying to hydrate during the run, but more than likely you were starting that run dehydrated.
Yeah,
for sure.
And there's even evidence there that like dehydration reduces your heart rate variability. It will cause your heart rate variability to drop, which affects performance, affects all kinds of things. So doing that, as a self-awareness thing that you did, like just wanting to be better for your kids and for your family and for you, you also got this huge performance increase and improvement because you did that. So like, you're seeing all kinds of, nice perks from doing that. And also, I just want to say kudos. Like, that's a big step.
Thank you, man.
That's hard.
Yeah.
That's got to be incredibly hard. I can't imagine how hard those first couple of weeks were.
No, they're bad.
I was going to say it probably drove you nuts, but kudos.
Yeah, man.
Thank you, man.
So now let's talk about, you've done all this stuff, like between quitting drinking, self-reflection, focus on your training, not getting caught up in everybody else's shit. This is the Eric show now. Like, we're talking about 2023. Eric, you come back to Mid-State Mile, you break the course record, and you win the race. All of your hard work has paid off.
Yeah.
Tell us about this race, what went right, and also, I'm sure there were still some things that went wrong. Tell us about those too that you tried to work on this year to be even better.
Sure. Had a good year. I was 10 months sober on the date when Mid-State started in 2023. And I remember walking to Becca and, because she was always checking in on me, and she's like, how's everything going? I'm like, hey, man, it's 10 months sober at the start of the race. And she's like, well, if that ain't your fucking why right there, but like that whole training into it. Like,
Becca saying it just like that.
Yeah.
Just like that. That was a quote. We can quote that. My mentality really shifted. So how I was saying, like, going into 2022, it was like I just wanted to like stay out there, and I was still very much like fixated on an end result. I was really just wanted to win. I wanted to do enough to win and be like the champion and take the quilt. But I always thought about those last 10 or so miles with Justin, and I tried to prepare for that hard place. And like, I call it the pit, when you're like in the last two, like you're in the pit with somebody else. I just tried to prepare for like those deep miles mentally, because like it takes a lot in a race, or you're trained to get to that physically, to feel that, and then have the mental emotions that come along with that. So I would just try to fast forward in my brain and pretend like I was always in like those last 10 miles, and just tell myself that like I didn't care what it was going to feel like. I didn't care if it was going to hurt. Like, I wasn't going to let off the gas. Like, no matter who was there or who was against me, like I wasn't going to crack at the end. I was going to stay strong, but it was more like I was just willing myself to like just accept anything that could possibly happen in the race, and not be fixating on like a pain or how strong or weak somebody else looked. Like, I just wanted to see how far I could go. And like, I adopted this mantra last year of like, how far can I go when there's an aid station every mile? And like, that's what I told myself. And I journaled, and I've written a lot about this. I'm actually writing a book about all this. But
cool.
the thing that I was telling myself was, like, how far can I run, if there's help? So like, I tried not to look at it like it was a race. I tried not to look at it like it was a last man standing. I tried to look at it like it was a continuous path of trail, and there was an aid station set up every mile. And I just stayed in it as long as I possibly could, and, not drinking. And I did a lot of strength stuff. Like, all my training runs felt really good. My body felt really good the whole entire time. And I was just able to, like, mentally stay in it and just stay strong. I had a great crew last year with Justin Ford and his wife and Brandon Michael Clark. Like, I was able to eat. Like, this was the first year, it being Father's Day, you kind of missing out, with the family and kids. My family was they moved up from Florida, and they were living in Clarksville that year. So like, I went there to like stay with them for a couple days before. Like, I had my kids showing up to the race. They were like watching the live stream, and it was cool to like have them be there and be a part of it, and like seeing me do this for like the right reasons and not for the accolades that are attached to it when all the miles are counted. It was like I was there to be better than myself and like run for something greater, and like just really like it kind of helped me like get back to my roots of why I got in ultra running. Like, I wanted to challenge myself. I wanted to do something that was hard and see if I could do it. And, like my first couple of races, like, like Cruel Jewel and Blood Rock, like I let those results like get to my head, and now like I wanted to like be somebody else. Like, I wanted the attention for it. I wanted to be like a sponsored runner. I wanted to have this huge following. And then like that year, like I just like didn't care. Like, I wanted to like get back to why like I started running, and like that whole race went so well. And like it was cool to like have my kids and my family like be a part of that, but also like, setting an example for like other people too. And like Aaron Dana, like such a great person. Like, he runs for like those same reasons. Like, he's there to like be a leader and like be a father and a good partner, and like, but also he's there to like, lead the other runners like in the best way possible. Like, he's like, I call him like the good shepherd out there. Like, he will bring people with him who are struggling and get them through like hard times out there. So like, it was so good to be running with somebody who like shares the same values as I did at the end. As far as things that went wrong in that race, around mile like 40, I'm like, and like I learned like not to look at the screen. I learned not to count miles. I learned like not to look at any other number than like 20 minutes. Like, I didn't care about what loop we're on. I've learned not to like look for those 50-mile, 100K, 100-mile milestones, the course record. I learned not to look for those. I learned to just really stay present in the moment and just pay attention to where my feet were going. That being said, paying attention to where my feet were going, around mile 40, I like flipped my ankle up really weird. And that didn't like sprain it like laterally. It like went forward and at like an angle, and I felt something kind of like pop, and like my ankle just swelled up like the whole entire race. So like I ran on like this ankle for like 90 miles. It was super swollen and like black and blue, but like I just like wouldn't think about it. And I think like towards the end of the race, like that was really starting to get to me. But I was really like Justin Ford, like I like picked up my sock and like looked under my sock, and like Justin hit my hand. He's like, "We don't do that. Don't look at that again." And I was like, okay. Like, never thought about it again. But like I was like telling myself like mantras like the body is a vehicle. Like only the vehicle feels pain. Like the soul is driving. Like, I just told myself like the soul doesn't feel pain. And I was just like really running outside of myself, and like was able to like stay strong like the whole entire race. And it was just such a magical thing to have that happen and like share that with somebody who's like one of my best friends out there, Aaron Dana. Like, it was just a beautiful, beautiful race.
Yeah. And kudos to Aaron.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
2 new course records. Aaron gets the assist in 2023. Eric walks away with, I assume it was the quilt, right? They still doing the quilt?
Well, yeah.
I mean, that, my friend, is a quilt I hope you curl up with every night.
Oh, I do. I wrap the kids in that thing, man. We watch TV with it.
So let me ask you this. What advice would you give to someone that either A, is still trying to get their first 50K out there, or B, has never ran it?
So I would say not to look for those milestones. Like if 50K is your goal, like there's certain people who are going to go out there and be like, hey, I would like to run this distance. I've never ran a 50K. I've never hit a 50K. But I don't think you should go out there with the intention to find that number. I think the best thing to do is to focus on that mile and just that mile. Let the miles be added up in the end and really just see what you can push. Danny Novotny, that kid, he'd only run like a marathon before, and that kid ended up doing like 60 something miles. I think with that kind of format and like a proper crew out there, like you can go a lot farther than you think. So I think you should just try to stay as present as possible. Focus on the task at hand, like a good cooling strategy, water, salt, and food. And if you can just do those 4 things and stay patient and present out there, like you can go a lot farther. Like I have one of my friends, she's coming out there and she's running this, and she's only run like 10 miles before. But I'm telling her, like, don't look for like your PR. Like just see what you can do with help every mile, and like you'll amaze yourself. Like a lot of people have done really great things out there just with that kind of format alone. So I don't think like you have to stay present out there. Whatever your goal is, whether you're going to be the last man standing or just seeing what you can do, I think you should just try to see what you can do and just stay in that moment as long as you possibly can. Try not to let your mind wander. Nothing's going to be settled while you're out there on the mile. Like your life will be waiting for you when you get back. You're not going to bust out your laptop and start handling things that are bothering you before the race. Like there's time for that. After the race will be over before you know it, but you got to stay in that moment.
That's a good point. What you said, stay in your mile. This will be my 4th year doing this. My first year, I wanted to be one of them people like, hey, I want to be up there. And then the second year, like, all right, I'm running my race. I want to see how far I can push myself. And then, I got like 60 something. And then the last year, I'm like, I want to do the same thing. It's about me. Like, I'm not trying to be the last person standing. I'm trying to beat myself. I'm trying to push myself. And, it worked out again last year. I beat the previous year. So that's exactly how I'm looking at it this year is I'm competing against myself. I'm not running anybody else's race. I'm doing exactly what I need to do to try to push myself past where I've been. And I think that's a good way to look at it.
Yeah, I mean, Matt's very first year, he got in the intro video mid-state.
The
movie.
I mean, Chad's movie laid out there.
He's laying on the ground.
Passed out.
See, I mean, what a good year to do. Like, you made it into the video.
I woke up and I go, well, I wonder where this video is going.
I still get messages today on where I bought that box at.
And I was showing my friend that, and she's like, "That's a really good idea." I'm like, "What is it? It's just a tackle box, right?"
Yeah, it's a Stanley toolbox. But I literally, some guy literally screenshotted the video the other day and sent it to me and said, "I know we don't know each other. Where'd you get this?" I'm like, I'm not sure they even make this thing now.
No,
like, I don't even think it's made now. But it was, it's just a way to keep things, organized. But it's just so funny because I forget. Like, I didn't even know that video was live. Like, that it was on YouTube until someone started screenshotting me a video and was like, screenshotting and like, where'd you get this box at? And I'm like, the first thing I see is like, oh, they called me Dave Compton. This sucks. It's David. But I didn't even know that video was on there. So it's funny. And like, when I finally go and watch it, Matt's in the intro video, like laying on the ground.
Passed out. American flag shorts.
Like, that's
look
funny.
good.
But, to Matt's point, like, it is definitely about running your own race.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, every race plays to someone's strengths and their weaknesses. And a lot of people are never going to be good at this race.
It's a hard race.
Because, they may not like, they don't do well in a last man standing, but damn it, I love the fact that the same people keep signing up to get 20 miles, then they try to get 26, and they're trying to get 30, because at some point they're going to figure it out. and they're not giving up. And that's the stuff I love to watch. I think it's great when people are just naturally good and they turn it into an event that you can watch for days. But I love seeing the people that are struggling with themselves, trying to figure out what to make it work. And the next year, their only goal is truly to get another mile than what they got the previous time, or another 2 miles. And I love that shit. Like, I love seeing people push themselves trying to be better like that. I think it's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of magic, and that's one of the things I've always been drawn back to this race for. Is I love people finishing that race and everybody says they had more to give. You know, you'll do a lot of traditional like 50 milers or 100 milers and be like, oh, that was horrible. I'm never going to do that one again. Like, you usually don't hear people say that at Midstate. Everybody's like, after they time out and they're still watching people push, they're like, I probably could have done 2 or 3 more laps. You know, whatever it is that takes them out, you know, most of the time it's a mental thing, but like everyone can still, you know, probably push 1 or 2 more. And it's cool to see people experience that growth and ponder it and then come back, you know, hungry. And it's cool to see people mature over the years because of this little race in Tennessee that's grown to be something so big. And it's just a very like special place to like truly test yourself, you know, because like, yeah, there's going to be a lot of climbing. Yeah, there's going to be a lot of miles ran. Yeah, it's going to take a long time. But if you're looking at that, it's really easy to like limit yourself. But if you can stay in that mile, you know, anybody can run a mile, you know, maybe not a fast one, but like with that kind of time, like you can go much further than like the limitations you'll like set on yourself, you know. It's like you just got to like stay in it. One thing I always loved that Becca said was, you know, like if you're patient enough, like you have all the miles to fix it. You know, your stomach's going south, you have all the miles to fix it. You're hot, you can fix it. You know, that one's a little bit harder, but you got to stay on top of that one early. But
Quick, yeah,
like
early.
you can fix it if you're patient enough. Like you have all the miles.
Well, to your point, Eric, when you said that people, you know, a lot of people do 100 mile or 50 miles, say, I'm never doing that again. If you look at the registration for Mid-State Mile, it is a lot of the same people who have been doing this race for year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4, and they keep coming back. And it is like they say it all the time, but it's like a family reunion. Like,
It
you see
really is.
people that you haven't saw from, like, you know, you don't see them any other races, and then all of a sudden you get to Mid-State and you're like, hey, dude, how you been? You know, this, and this. You're like, you know, every year you look for the same people that you haven't saw in a year, and then you're all back together.
Well,
you're all out there suffering.
It's kind of like Vol State.
Yeah.
If you look at Vol State, they got, you know, a couple hundred finishers.
Yeah.
It's the same finishers every year, though. Like, I mean, they let, you know, I think last year, Laz said it was the most newbies he's ever had in a race. And that's, you know, when we were running it.
Yep.
But if you look, like, the people finishing it every year, there's 100 people in it. Well, 80 of them's the same.
Yeah.
You know, it's got a good cult following of those journey runners. And that's kind of what Mid-State has. It just kind of has a cult following of people that love hard shit. You know, like they love the pain and the grit of the race and like pushing yourself. And I mean, it's no lie. I mean, you take that much elevation with Tennessee humidity, it sucks. It's hard. It is not ever going to be an easy race. If it was in the winter, it would be a little easier.
Maybe.
Because, you know, Tennessee Mile, you know, that's why you can run the Tennessee Mile, because it's in December. You can run a little bit there, not like just kill yourself. But at Mid-State, man, that humidity, Tennessee humidity is hard. It is hard to deal with.
It's hot in the South, man.
Have you noticed a difference with that, going from Florida to Montana and now coming back to Tennessee?
Yeah, I can feel it the second I walk out of the plane. You know, like that little crack in between the door, and I'm like, oh my God, here it goes. But I think in the last like 3 years now, being properly like heat trained going into it, I think that, you know, I don't have that like, you know, thick Florida humidity skin anymore. You know, it's, you know, it's in my brain. But
when you were from Florida, you weren't getting the elevation, but you at least had the humidity.
Well, he was heat trained.
Yeah, I was heat trained for it, so that's why I think I did well the first year. But we've adapted.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, Eric, we can't wait to see you this weekend, man. It's going to be fun to watch. Like I said, I've not been there in years, so I'm kind of excited just to get to be a spectator. And I'm probably going to be walking around with a camera, watching some of this stuff.
Make sure you follow Becca's rules, though. Don't be on the course with us.
That's right. Don't worry, I know the rules. I'm a race director. But let's we're going to transition into some questions now. But while Matt's pulling up the list of questions that
they're on 3 different areas or 4 different areas.
He struggles with this.
They're everywhere.
But while he's doing that, I want to ask you the very first question we ask everybody on this podcast, and it's, why do you run? Like, what keeps you going? It's something that is like, just like those lonely, dark nights out there on Mid-State when everything's so hard and everything's hurting. Why? Why do you do it? Why do you continue to push yourself?
I think the main reason is really learning who I am at my core and what I'm capable of when things get difficult, and what is my level of perseverance and how well I can maintain it. And like, that's in all aspects of life now, but it's like, I really like finding out, like, how hard can I push something and be successful in it? Like, how much can I learn in this moment of difficulty and like come out successful on the other side? And I think like seeking out these hard things has really helped me be more of a student, and like always being willing to learn something new through something that's, more challenging than the last challenging thing. So like, I'm just open to like finding out more about myself as like I progress in this sport. I think that's really the main thing. That's why I started. I kind of lost myself in between for a couple of years, but like now I've gotten back to that. And I'm sober, and it's like I kind of have these values I started with, but now I have the maturity and experience over the years, and now I like have that with my original roots. So I just want to build off of that.
Do you think that your running journey and like where you started and the reasons of why you started is also kind of the reasons that led you to like wanting to be better and stop drinking alcohol and just trying to make your life better? Have you ever thought about like that whole journey and like where you would be if you never started running?
I really haven't thought if like I didn't start running. Like, I don't know what I would have been doing. Like, I was always like active and stuff, but like that was more like, surfing in the ocean and like, skateboarding and stuff. It was never something like an endurance space. Like ultra running's brought me, so like this, like, yeah, I really don't know where I would be without running and like the things it's taught me over the years, because I just feel like the lessons like change with time, and they unveil themselves at, particular moments, and you don't know when that's going to happen. But I think it's just been something that's always continued to teach me about myself versus like, how fast could I run something? Like, how far could I run? I think it's just putting myself in that difficulty just makes me continue to learn about myself.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing is like, it's one of the things that I love kind of about the discipline of all of this is that it puts structure in your life.
Yeah, it does.
It creates like a habit that you have to figure out. If you don't truly make it a priority and you don't build it into your daily life, you're not going to be able to sustain it. Mm-hmm. So you have to have discipline to be a runner, to be a good runner. Like you can show up here and there and like do a 50K and walk it and do that. And that's fine. Some people are extremely happy with that. But like for you out there grinding and trying to win a race, you have to have discipline. You have to have structure. You have to be thinking about this every single day. You have to hit your training plan. It's just constant work. And I'll say this, like when you have that much structure in your life, you start realizing that some of the other shit has to go. And it's the shit that may not be good, just like alcohol, other things that are affecting you being able to do that. And I think that is extremely important. And that goes beyond running. Like there are other habits that force that or other activities that force that. But that's the one positive I see from running is that if you truly build that into your life and you make it a priority, you're going to have to cut some of the shit out of your life to make it work.
Yeah.
And I think you're living proof of that.
Absolutely.
Matt, take us off, brother.
All right, we
Hey,
got a
and
few
Eric,
different questions.
full disclosure, we have no idea what's on here.
Oh,
So
there's
get
a-
ready.
There's a few
I
here.
love
There's a few.
it. By the way.
So the first question is, why Mid-State? Why does he think that he has found the success at Mid-State versus other races he has run?
I think the main thing with Mid-State is like, especially for the last 5 years, like once that race came into the picture, I wanted to see what I was capable of. From that first year of like knowing I could have done more out there, I wanted to see what more looked like. And then not really, and it's like we said over the whole pod, it was, my mindset like changed a lot, and I changed a lot in my life, and I think Mid-State is really responsible for me having to like look inward and focus on things that I needed to change. But I always, since Mid-State's happened, like my focus has always been on Mid-State. Like I've ran some other races and kind of just done like some willy-nilly, and like I used to put in a lot of work for like other races and stuff, and like the things I kind of ran in between have just kind of been like, well, we'll just do this for fun, or we'll do this for this. It hasn't like really had my focus like Mid-State has. But I think it's just really challenged me to like remain in a place of difficulty and like force myself to like push myself. And I think that's what I've really, really taken away from Mid-State is like I like that inner drive for me to just have to push. And that's, also spilled over into my life because of that, of pushing so hard and training for this race specifically has also now made me learn to push harder in my own life and not just being a good athlete, but being a good father, being a good friend, being a good Christian, like all that stuff. It translates to both worlds.
I think that goes into other runners as well, having that one race.
Yeah.
Because it's not going to be Mid-State for everybody. But I've heard other people kind of say similar to what you've said, and I feel like that is something that every runner at some point that is truly like in this sport trying to find their place, they'll find that one special race that really just sends them over the top to where they want to be better and be better at life, be better at their family, be better at their training, be better at their, just in general. And I love the fact that Mid-State is yours because, that's kind of like where it started, like 2020. It was almost the year that the race started too, which is really cool. But I think that's awesome to hear because I think that applies to a lot of runners in their life. Like there's always like a few years in, they find this one race that is just truly special to them. And they're going to do it every year regardless. And they're going to push themselves and they're going to try to work for it and be better. And it's so awesome to watch, like for some runners, it's just completely different races. But I love the fact that yours is Mid-State and I can't wait to see what you do this weekend.
Oh, thank you, man.
All right. The next question is, it says, I'm curious, does he log all of his miles on Strava?
Man, they calling you out.
I do actually. But I will say like the last 2 years, like I've definitely run a lot less miles than I did for like the first 2 years. Everything's been a very quality over quantity. Like I used to run like a bunch of like junk miles and I'd want to hit X amount of vert. I do like a lot less miles now, just mostly because like work schedule and kids and multiple jobs and stuff. But like the miles I am hitting are like hard miles, like a lot of vert, very like specifically tailored workouts. Like everything's, very specific, but it's also so I can also recover enough in between and have time for the kids and, like evenly share things. I've kind of taken like a back burner like the last like year, just having the kids out here, but that's what it should be, but I'm still making time for myself and making sure those miles count. But yeah, it's definitely a lot less miles. Like last year, I don't think I ran more than 35 miles a week leading into that race. I think like my longest run I did was like a 20 miler, but with a ton of vert. Kind of the same thing this year. I don't think I ran over like a 40-mile week leading into Mid-State, but like as much vert as I can get, a lot of strength in the gym, riding my bike, like yoga stuff, like just kind of overall fitness and not just specifically running.
I love to hear you say that.
Yeah.
You got, in my opinion, you got to have all three.
Yeah.
Fitness, running, yoga. Got to have all three.
Yep.
The strength is a big part. I said fitness, but strength. Like, you got to have strength training to be able to do this.
We're not spring chickens anymore, you know. We're summer chickens now, you know.
That's right, baby.
Well, I guess you answered the next question. How many miles do you put in per week?
Yeah, about like 25 to 35. Just depends on the week, depends on my schedule, you know.
Hey, I want to read something I'm reading right now to you, Eric. I think this is pretty cool. Great guy and has overcame a lot of demons. I think that is his drive.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
that's pretty cool. People see that.
That's good, man. Like,
I guess you've kind of went over your training for Mid-State. You do strength training, you do yoga. Do you do any hill repeats?
All hill repeats. I have a couple mountains right, like 2 miles from my house. So like those will be my long runs. Like I will just see how many times I can bag the summit and come back down. Like I'll just find a good steady hike up pace, and then I'll run down at like my heart rate. Like a low heart rate won't get it over 135. If it does, I'll walk a little bit till it gets low, and then I'll start running again. But everything's very like absorbable. Like I don't feel exhausted on the run before or after. Like everything is just being soaked in, and I'm ready to recover and like get back to my life. You know, like no overtraining. You know, less is more approach. Like I feel like that's kind of worked for me. I used to like crank out like 60-mile weeks, 80-mile weeks, like 20,000 feet of vert, and it was just a lot, you know. But yeah, less is more for me.
Have you incorporated the stair climber any?
Yeah, this is the first year I've incorporated the stair climber, and I actually really like that. Then I was like sweating buckets when I first started doing that thing. And then I even found like one Stairmaster that's like just out of the range of the fan, so it hits the other three, but not this one, and like that's the one I like to go to, and just like kind of make it like a little heat training session too. But yeah, I really like the Stairmaster. I wish there was like a down Stairmaster, so you could do that too. But I like that's a good thing to use at the gym.
It sounds like something we
I've
could
seen
invent.
people turn backwards and walk on them, so I'm sure you've probably done that too. But kind of works those same muscles. But I see people walk sideways on those things. I see people walk backwards. But they are awesome for last man standing events. I use it a lot for when I'm training for backyard ultras.
Yeah, we'll sit there and like play with the pace. So like it'll kind of do like this ladder up then ladder down thing, and yeah, just find a good rhythm and good form. And
you do not sweat anywhere like you do on a stair climber.
It's awful. It's awful.
Yeah, I can go like 2,000 feet up this mountain by my house, and like, yeah, I'm not sweating a drop, and yeah, I go in that thing for 40 minutes, and I'm dying. But yeah, it's a great workout.
Yeah. I think
definitely recommend.
If you're soaked, it's awful.
The first time I used it, really, when Sweetwater Anytime Fitness got it, I went over and I used it for the first year of Mid-State, and I'm going. I did it for an hour. I do it an hour each time. I would get off, and I would walk across the gym to get to the sweat rags or the paper towels to wipe off the stuff, and I would be just squirting sweat out of my shoes just everywhere. And Brittany,
I was wondering where this conversation was going for a minute.
And Brittany's like, this is nasty. Like, you're just sweating this stuff all over the whole gym. I'm like, I can't help it. The whole machine's covered. The whole floor is covered.
Oh no, I gotta wipe that thing down for the next person. Like, I'm sorry, guys, but yeah,
it's rough.
Shut it down after Matt gets off.
It was rough. The next question says, have you done anything different this year training for Mid-State from your previous years?
Yeah, so I started just kind of doing overall fitness. So I started like incorporating like riding my bike, doing the Stairmaster, really focusing on strength, and just like as we've gotten older, like I still feel like I've got like that young like 20-year-old strength, and then I'm like, man, my back hurts all the time. So like I really focused on like not just my legs, but like my upper body stuff. I got a compound bow. I started shooting a bow. Like started also doing a lot of like yoga. I have this like Shakti mat. I don't know if you all know what that is. It's like basically like an Indian bed of nails with these little spiky acupressure things, and like I'll lay on that and just relax, and like I fall asleep on this thing. But I've been doing just a lot of like the little like glue in between the blocks, just have just an overall fitness in like every aspect, and not just be specifically strong in running.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Makes you a better athlete overall.
My last question is from somebody you know. How many McDonald's cheeseburgers did you consume after the Georgia Death Race?
I think I know exactly who that is. I want to say probably close to 6, maybe.
Wow.
Man, so you're just like me, dude. I literally, when I finished like Georgia Jewel, I asked Mary to drive me direct. As soon as I crossed finish line, we went to Burger King. That was the closest place. Like I was craving a burger. Do you crave like stuff as soon as you finish a race?
Dude, last year's mid-state, I think it was Jay Busy showed up with a tray of lasagna. I ate a half a tray of lasagna at mid-state, and
That was in the race, wasn't it?
Like,
Was that
I don't
during the
remember
race?
where it came from. It just showed up, and I just started eating lasagna.
I'm pretty sure that I remember in the nighttime. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was night, or maybe it's the next morning when I woke up. You were eating that dang lasagna, just sitting there, just chowing down on it.
I wrapped it in a tortilla at one point, and I had just had like a lasagna burrito, and like was eating like Publix fried chicken. Like I ate anything that got put in front of my face last year.
He did.
And I'm gonna do it again this year. I got to find somebody with an oven that lives close to the race. But yeah, bring a lasagna.
Sorry, you commented on there on the mid-state thing, talking about lasagna.
Love it.
Oh,
Old habits die hard.
Well, Eric, do you have any questions for us?
What races you guys got coming up this year? I know Matthew's going to be there. What do you have, Compton?
So I just did Yeti 50 2 weeks ago, and PR'd that one. That's my best race I think I've had in a long time. Last year was a fluke. The only race I had that was really good last year was Ball State. Ended up with rhabdo and all kinds of other things. But Yeti 50 did really good. I got Bob's last man standing in August. My goal there is to be drug off that course. Like I want to get the coin and go to Biggs. So I'm in it. I've taken the whole week off for work. I'm going to be there as long as I can be. I'm ready for that one. And then my big race this year. So like all of this training that we've been working on is for Yeti 100. So, I did the marathon in March, and then the Yeti 50 and this past, 2 weeks ago. And then it's all kind of leading into Yeti 100 because last year my girlfriend ran Yeti 100 and, she won the female part and she was second overall. I mean, she's first female, she was second overall. On her way home, and I was just got to thinking about it over the few months, and I just looked at her one day and I said, I want to try to win. I think I just want to try to win a race next year. Like, I think that should be my goal. Like, I want to win a 100-mile race. I've never ran one. I mean, I've never won one. I've podiumed all kinds of them, but I've never won one. I was like, that's my goal. So, I picked Yeti 100, and that's what we're going for. And, we'll see. I did really good at Yeti 50. I ran it in 6.5 hours and won it. And I'm hoping this training will carry over to Yeti 100. But regardless if I win the race, I just want to hit my PR, or my goal, and that's to go 15 hours or less in that 100-miler. And, I think I can do that based on the performance of the 50-miler. I mean, I ran it very consistently the whole time. Hell, I ran a Boston qualifier in 3 hours, 5 minutes in the Yeti 50. So that was kind of cool, too, awesome. to get that. So, Nick, you need to get your BQ so we can go. But yeah, that's basically it. I'm going to do Pinhoti 100 at the end of the year, just kind of for fun. Because I haven't got to do a real trail race this year. So Pinhoti is going to be my 100-mile trail race. So I'm kind of like you. You've got one big 100-mile trail race. You're going back and you're going to get it this year.
Oh, for sure.
I just got Mid-State, and then Memphis Marathon, and then probably some crazy stuff in between that I just signed up for.
Yeah, I would say when Matt says that, Matt literally does a race like every 3 weeks. So
that's what I prefer. It makes it fun for me. If I
you race a lot.
Training for one race is great. Like Mid-State, I would love to just train for Mid-State one year because I don't train for Mid-State. Like I come in with like 50 or 60,000 feet of climbing, and I did 25 of that last month. Like So like I don't train for Mid State, but I would love to train for Mid State maybe next year. I don't know. And just
I'm not sure Matt could quit racing long enough to train.
I would have to set my schedule up to benefit that race so I could race with a lot of elevation and stuff. I don't know. I just love running. I just love racing.
It's all different. Like this is the first year that, I mean, this is the first year like I picked a race and didn't do any other race.
Yeah.
Like that was my sole focus, and it worked. Like it was a lot of work. It was 7 months of training and speed work and strength training to get to this point, but it worked. But man, at one point I was like, I'm over here with FOMO when I'm seeing all these people post race pics, and I'm like, I'm so ready to run.
Yep.
So ready to run. But I'm glad I didn't, because it all just, fell into place.
Yeah, it's good to kind of like dial it back and like save it for one, just go crazy on one.
And I've never done that. This was the first year. I've always been that guy, just like, all of us have been, where we just like,
oh yeah,
I want to do this race.
Yep.
But then you get to the point you're like, I think I can really, like, if I pick a race, I think I can like really do some shit there, and that's like where I'm at this year, because in a few years I'm going to go completely opposite. I got a really big goal that's just stupid. I'm not even going to talk about it right now, but it's different. So I'm trying to get like my racing out of the way, and then I'm going to go for this record. But
yeah, I got like 8 years to my prime of endurance racing. I'm gonna have fun.
Matt's still growing into them endurance legs.
Yeah, I'm like, I got what till 40 prime years, so I got a while.
You got some time.
Well, Eric, dude, it's been so much fun. I will say this, like Becca, John, we'll see you this weekend. We love you guys. You put on such a good event throughout the years, and you built something truly special. And that's one of the things that's it's so cool about Tennessee in general, is we have a lot of good race directors, and that includes Becca and John. I mean, they're good race directors. They put on a great event. I remember from the first time I've been there, and every year, and I watched the live stream last year for a while, even though I wasn't there. I got to watch everybody's smiling face, just getting sick and laying at the finish line, which was cool. But I mean, y'all put in a lot of blood and sweat into this race, and it doesn't go unnoticed. So keep doing what you're doing. We love you guys. We'll see you this weekend. And Eric, dude, this has truly been an eye-opening podcast for me.
I learned a lot.
I never had any idea that we were going to go this deep, or that it was going to be this fun and so inspiring. And dude, you are truly a great person, and you're a kind person. And to me, that goes a long way. You can be a lot of things in this world, but the people that are kind, it really sticks out, and it shows. And we need more people like you in this world that truly are just kind and help people and motivate people. And when you're out on the course, or when you're running with somebody, you just bring that kindness out. And man, I can't tell you how appreciative I am of that. And I can't wait to see you this weekend.
Oh, thank you, man. Yeah, it's gonna be a big family reunion. Like,
yes,
thank you guys for having me. Like, yeah, we'll do it big in Tennessee this weekend, man.
Yeah,
yes, sir. All right. Well, Eric, have a great night, man, and thank you so much for your time.
Thanks, Eric.
All right, we'll see you guys.